Yo, yo, yo. Hey guys, welcome back to another awesome edition of the Best Practices Show. Have you ever thought about new patients and how they come into your office? Which ways are the best for my practice? How should I do this? Where should I put more emphasis? Well, today we bring on a good friend of mine, a regular guest, one of my favorite mentors of all time, Dr. Jim McKee. And he shares with us the 5 ways you can bring new patients into your dental practice. It is awesome. Please listen to this. I hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll see you soon. Hey guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show podcast. You ever thought to yourself, how do I bring new patients into my practice? I need new patients. It's an important part of my practice, but I've never been trained formally or had somebody help me think about new patients. Well, today I've got a dear friend of mine, an unbelievable mentor, Dr. Jim McKee, and he's going to be talking about the 5 ways to bring new patients into your practice. Jim, as always, love having you back.
Always great to be with you, Kirk. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And, I was talking to Jim before we hit the go button here. Jim is such a great mentor of mine. I literally could throw him almost any curveball, any challenge you guys have as a dentist or a team member, and he would give us some great thinking on this. But, Jim, let's do this. Talk about why you're going to talk about this today. What's the why behind this?
You know, the why behind it, honestly, we need new patients in our practice. And I think today it's probably the singular largest struggle that we have in dentistry is attracting new patients to our practice. Now, there's a number of different ways you can do it, and we'll talk about the 5 main ways you can do it. But I think sometimes we get hung up on the quantity of new patients that we bring into our practice when maybe we should be thinking about the quality of new patients.
Right.
You know, there's an old saying in dentistry, if you have to have the door so wide open to bring so many people into the practice, maybe you need to close the back door so not as many patients are leaving the practice. And I think that in my experience, when I look back at my practice, the times that I really had a lot of new patients that maybe didn't understand what I did, that they were just coming to the practice for no specific reason. A lot of those patients stuck around, but a lot of them tended to leave because I think that patients will seek dental offices to serve their needs. The reality is most of the time patients don't know what they need. So our job is to help them understand what they need so there's a reason for them to stay in our practices. Yeah. I mean, I really believe, Kirk, that the dentist who's on this podcast is most likely going to be offering services at a different level than the average dentist in their community. If they weren't, they wouldn't be spending time to listen to this podcast. So we're going to talk about not only how to bring the quantity of patients up, but I think really we should think about the quality of patients as well that we're trying to attract to our practice.
Yeah. Now I should say this, give us a little history lesson. You do a lot of teaching. You've taught at a lot of the institutes. Have you had any formal training in this? Like, how did you learn about this? Was this boots on the ground type of a thing? Did you get a little help early in your career? How did you learn about it?
Oh man, this is going to be a long answer to a short question. You know, I was really lucky. When I got out of school, I didn't know anything. And literally the practice I bought, first day in practice, I did an amalgam buildup on tooth number 19. And I'm proud to say the patient is still a patient in the practice. I didn't do anything the rest of the day till 4:00 when I did an endo on a upper left molar. Maybe one of the reasons why I don't do endo was a horrible experience for both myself and the patient. But I had a lot of slow days in the office. The practice I bought was a hobby practice. It was a woman who was in practice 2 days a week. Her husband was a physician. They shared the office. So it wasn't a practice that was built on volume. It was never a busy practice. it was a great neighborhood practice, but it was really, really, really small. I mean, the production was barely anything, to be completely honest. But that's okay. It gave me 2 rooms of equipment. It gave me some charts that I could build a practice from. And from there, my quest has always been to try and bring new patients into the practice. A lot of dentists will buy a practice that has a lot of new patients. And those have a different complication or struggle as to how to make it all work. I never had that problem. My problem was always growing. So we're going to talk about the different ways that you can do that. And I'll share my experiences, what worked and what didn't work. But I really think that the excitement about new patients, when a new patient comes to your practice, it's a new beginning. It's a new beginning for the dentist. It's a new beginning for the patient. And the really neat thing is we get to do that on an ongoing basis. And we have the ability to make a huge impact in our patients' lives, because many times we're going to be able to offer them solutions to problems that they've had for a while. And if you can start to solve patients' problems, all of a sudden patients start sending you other patients. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about how to do that. But again, I think that the key is to understand your practice and to understand what you can offer new patients coming to your practice. That's really the key. The old question is, who am I the answer for? And I think that question really we should ask every day in our practice. Who am I the answer for? I might be the answer for implant patients. I might be the answer for airway patients. I might be the answer for cosmetic patients or aesthetic patients. I may be the answer for joint or occlusion patients. I may be restorative. I may be holistic dentistry. You can do anything you want in dentistry. That's the beauty of it. I think certain things you emphasize clinically give you the ability to attract new patients to your practice maybe more easily, and we'll talk about that. But that's the exciting thing about dentistry. You can kind of tailor your practice any way you want to go. And then once you have an idea of that, your practice, you'll be able to now tailor how you want to bring new patients into that practice.
Yeah, I love it. And you're going to walk us through the 5 ways. And if you guys are listening, I'm going to encourage you to take notes here. So take us down this path. Jim, where do we start?
You know what? I'm looking back at my experiences. The first way, this is the way I was taught, is that basically what you want to do is you want to do internal marketing to your existing patients. And I think today, it's critical. I think today, the patients that choose our practices, they have to make a choice right off the bat. And if they're going to choose to be in our practice, then I think we need to do everything that we can to make sure they have a positive experience. And, it's interesting to look and see what defines a positive experience. There are some types of dental spas who come in and you can get warm mittens on your hands, you can get juices, you can get aromatherapy, and that's all nice. But is that what patients are looking for in terms of a positive experience? I'm not saying anything negative about that, but I think ultimately patients come for us because they want 2 things. They want answers and they want options.
Right.
If we can give them answers to what their problems are and options on how to treat them, then I think we can start to put together a patient base that probably has a higher chance of staying in our practice rather than exiting the back door, so we have to bring more people in the front door. So I think our goal for every new patient is to be able to understand what their issues are so we can give them answers, and then we can give them options. Now, the problem is some patients don't know they need answers. So in my early days, I went to Pete Dawson's occlusion classes. I went to the LD Pankey Institute. I would come back with awesome clinical information. I'd present the treatment plan and the patient would say, "Could I get my x-rays? I'm going to leave the practice." Because actually the treatment plan I was presenting was correct. They didn't understand the need. Mm-hmm. So part of the problem is if you're going to market to patients inside your practice, we have to make sure that we leave enough time so that we can understand what their true needs are. So many times we can look in someone's mouth and we know what their problems are. And if it was a treatment planning class in dental school, you'd get an A plus. The problem is you can't solve your problem in someone else's mouth. The patient has to understand what the problem is, and it has to be a problem for patients. I have patients whose mouths many times are in pretty significant disrepair, yet they don't have any pain, which to them equates to not having a problem. Those are the patients I used to blow out of the water. I think the more experience I've got under my belt talking to patients, you start to get an idea of where patients are. And I think my job is to meet them wherever their level of awareness is and then move forward. Now, if you've got someone that has no desire to do anything to maintain their mouth, that's okay. It's not your mouth, it's their mouth. Then your practice management decision becomes, do I want to allocate time in my practice to them? And I still, to this day, see a lot of patients who, if you use the Pankey classification system, are below the line, where they don't really value what we do as dentists. But some of them are friends, some of them are family members. So it doesn't mean you're going to cull the practice and get rid of everyone. But at some point, we are all small business owners. So at some point, we have to determine that the only thing we have to share with our patients is our time. And if we're spending 80% of our time with patients who really don't value our services, that's going to be a problem. So my goal is always, doesn't matter how much work a patient needs, it's whether they truly value our services and they're willing to become part of the practice with the basic things that we believe in. Trying to do the least amount of dentistry, trying to take care of problems before they get too big, trying to basically look at people and say, what would I want done if it was my mouth?
Yeah. And internally, as you met people where they were, did you find other patients referred other patients? And talk about that too, because number one, internal referrals, patients come really well referred. I mean, do they know the deal type of a thing?
It's a great question, and it really all depends on who refers them.
Right.
That's why one of the first questions we ask is, how did you hear about our practice? If they heard about it from a patient who misses every other appointment, who doesn't pay their bills, then I'm going to see the patient, I'm going to assess them, but I'm certainly going to be a little bit aware that someone who referred them to the practice may not truly understand what we're trying to do in the practice.
Right.
On the other hand, if someone's referred by an awesome patient, does what they're supposed to do, never misses a cleaning, treats the staff well, understands the role of insurance, then yeah, we're going to bend over backwards to try and make a place in that practice for them and for anyone else they want to refer. Likes refer likes.
Yep.
So that's why if we can build a patient base of people who value the dentistry we provide, again, if you go back to the old Pankey classification system, the above the line patient, then I think you can build a sustaining practice in pretty much any economy. It's interesting to look back. I've practiced long enough now to go through a couple dips in the economy. The 08 recession, 9/11, when that hit. We've been really fortunate because honestly, our numbers haven't dropped the year. I mean, they went up every year because we were able to offer services to patients that they were going to come for regardless of the economy. So that's why I said before, you could be an implant dentist, you could be a cosmetic dentist, you could be an airway dentist. Choose something that's kind of inelastic, if you want to use that term, that's economics term, in terms of the market where someone's going to require that treatment, and it's not going to be based upon the fees, I guess basically is the thing. It's interesting. I saw a lot of aesthetic dentists have really hard times when the economy turns south because a lot of that's elective dentistry. And I get that. And, and the work is beautiful. And it's not like all the cases go away, but when people have hard times financially, it's easy to say, you know what, I'm going to put off those 6 or 8 or 10 veneers maybe for 6 months and see how the market does. See if I can get a little bit better return on my 401k before I dip into that to spend some money on that. So we'll talk about, I think, different ways to do it. But the first way, and the way that we are kind of trained as dentists, is to market to your patients, market to the patients in your practice. And it's a very effective way to do it. But here's my question for you. How many patients will an average patient refer to your practice? One,
Yeah.
two, three, a quarter, maybe. They'll refer some patients, but it might not be the numbers that we're looking for. So we'll hang on to that question for a little bit.
It's a great question. It's a great question. So what's number 2?
So if the first one is internal marketing to patients we know, let's look at the opposite of that. That's external marketing to the patients we don't know is basically what it becomes. And it's been interesting to look at the different ways of external marketing. Back in the day, you used to have direct flyers, you have newsletters that you'd send out to patients. Today, social media dominates everything. You've got Instagram, you've got TikTok, you've got all the different things that you can use. And this can be a very effective way as well. So again, all of this work, but again, we tend to be marketing to patients. So therefore, the same question goes out. How many patients are going to be able to refer to you? Now, these are patients we don't know. So if you do have a very active social media and you can make it work, it's probably a nice way to think about trying to bring new patients into your practice. Now, here's the problem. They're unfiltered. So we don't know what we're bringing into our practice. That goes back to kind of the quantity quality discussion. You can bring a lot of patients in the front door. Depends how many are leaving out the back door to determine how many you need to bring in the front door. So if we're marketing to patients, and again, depends upon what we're marketing for, we can bring a lot of patients in using social media. And there's great people who do that far better than I do it. But that's the second way that we'll bring patients in. Direct mailing, social media, basically websites are that as well. Now you'll get some crossover for patients who are patients of your practice, but that's basically what we're doing. We're throwing a net as wide as we can, and we're trying to catch fish in that net to bring them into the practice. Now, we don't know if we're going to like the fish or not, but that's okay. Well, if we get enough fish, we'll get the fish that we want.
Right.
So, and I've done those. I did newsletters back in the day. You try to keep your name out in front of patients was kind of the thought process. Today, again, you can do that instantaneously with social media. But again, that's going to depend upon how much time you want to devote to that, how much time you want staff members to devote to that, what message do you want to have sent. So really, you need to put some time and some resources into the marketing plan to make sure that your practice vision is being communicated accurately to the masses through social media.
Yeah.
So while it works, it will require some effort, and you have to manage that on an ongoing basis to make sure that what you're getting out there is the message that you're looking for.
Yeah, totally agree. And you're in Chicago, so external marketing can be cost prohibitive for a lot of dentists. I mean, when you think about it.
Well, you know what the funny thing is? It's not only cost prohibitive, it's time prohibitive.
Right.
I hear a lot of dentists say, you know what, I'm spending too much time on my social media. And then all of a sudden there becomes a life balance issue. And then the social media doesn't get updated for 6 months.
Right.
That's the problem. Or, look at how many websites you look at that are outdated. That's really the issue. We'll talk about websites in a little bit because obviously I think they have an important role to play, but someone has to keep it fresh. So that means either the dentist or that means they're going to have to allocate time for one of their staff members to do it. Now, today, we have a lot of young staff members who are really good at social media, and that might not be a hard thing to do. It all depends upon your practice, all depends on how much time you want to allocate to that, and what message you're looking to get out.
Yeah. I love how you're presenting this too, because it could be a mix of any one of these 5.
Right, for sure. It's probably going to be a mix
Right.
when you really look at it.
Yeah.
So number three is basically becoming involved in your community. You know, when Lisa and I came out here, I joined the Lions Club. That's the community service that helps people with vision problems. We ran the Halloween parade for 10 years. I coached baseball teams. You sponsor baseball teams. You'll have stuff like that, Little League. I was ran a Cub Scout troop. Lisa ran a Brownie troop. So you're involved in the community. And really, I have to tell you, it's a really nice way to give back to the community. I enjoyed all those activities a lot. I met a lot of people too doing it. I didn't get a lot of patience out of it, though, to be honest with you. It was nice, and my name got out there. And over time, you would see patients trickle in here or there. Oh, you coached my son 3 years ago in baseball. You coached my daughter in softball. I mean, so yes, you do get referrals doing that. But again, it's a slower build. It's a nice build, but I think that in my experience, when I wasn't as involved in the community activities, the older I got, some of those patients melted away.
Mhm.
So while it's a nice way to do it, and a lot of people will build a practice this way, and I think it's another part of it, you just have to realize, I think, what the limitations are of that.
Yeah. Very well said. And what's number 4?
Number four is establishing a presence in your professional community. And I will tell you, out of the 5 ways we're going to talk about, my belief today is that this is the most valuable one. Now, I wouldn't have told you that when I was a young dentist because I didn't have anything to become involved in my professional community for. As my experience started to increase and I started to see more occlusal and joint based patients, basically what happened was I started to develop a presence in my professional community. I started a study club. That was a great way to meet other dentists. We were trying to figure out ways how to implement things we were learning at Dawson, at Pankey, at Spear, at Coyce, at Piper. We were trying to figure out how to put those things into practice. That study club is still active 35 years later. So really what it did, it gave me a presence in the dental community. I didn't do it for that reason. I wish I would have thought about it, but it was totally off the radar. It was strictly a learning club. You know, it's a pizza and salad in a couple of beers club, you know, when you go to a meeting. Everyone pays the same amount, everyone splits expenses of equally. It's a learning club. You know, basically what we do is we have people who come for 2 years and they come as our guest. And if they come to every meeting, then they get invited to be a member. The strength of a study club is the repeated experience that you have when you're learning with like-minded people. We used to have people who wanted to join the study club and we'd have them join and they come to 1 meeting out of 6 each year. That wasn't beneficial for the other people in the club because the people who weren't there couldn't contribute on a regular basis.
Right.
So what we did is we say, okay, if you come for 2 years and you come to the meetings, we'll offer you a membership. But it's a low-cost membership, but it gave me a chance to meet more dentists. I started to put together some presentations. I did some presentations at local dental societies, for local study clubs. And all of a sudden, what I started to notice is I started to have patients who would be referring me problems, basically mostly TMJ and occlusion problems, because they weren't comfortable treating it. I wasn't getting a lot of aesthetic cases because they wanted to do those. I wasn't getting a lot of airway cases because they wanted to do those. But I was getting a lot of TMD occlusion, and I was getting some restorative cases that were probably more complex than an average dentist may have been comfortable doing. And what I started to notice is, wow, this is an amazing situation because almost every patient that was being referred to me by another dentist came in at a different level of awareness. I never had a referral-based practice as a general dentist. So some patients come in really committed to doing what you want them to do, and other patients blow it off. Different when a dentist sends the patient there because they're there for a reason. So almost routinely, my acceptance rate went up to almost close to 100% because patients were there for a reason and they knew they had to come to me for a reason. Here was the other thing, though. We said patients refer 1, 2, 3 patients a quarter. I get 3 patients a day from some dentists. So all of a sudden, the volume of new patients you get coming from dentists dwarfs what you get being referred to by other patients in your practice. So for me, unbeknownst to me, this was the best way to attract new patients into our practice, was to market to other dentists. And if you think about it, how many dentists in your community would love to have somewhere they could send their TMJ patients to? Because most of them don't want to treat them. Most of them are afraid of them. Most of them think they're crazy. Right. The reality is they're all super nice people. They're just frustrated. They haven't been diagnosed. Now, I'm not saying you don't get a couple people that have problems north of the condyle, but most of the time, those patients are really solid people. They're just looking for answers the same way we are on anything else. So once I started to think about this more, I said the key to bringing new patients in and bringing in high-level new patients is really to be able to be a resource in your community for things that other dentists don't want to do.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what a specialist is. I don't want to do root canals, so I send them to my endodontist. I don't want to place implants, so I send them to my periodontist. I don't want to remove wisdom teeth, I send them to my oral surgeon. So that's basically, if you can become the person in your community that general dentists will send their occlusion cases to, that will send their TMD cases to, that will send their complex restorative cases to, that's really, I think, how you build a thriving practice. And the nice thing is, it's strictly fee for service. So you really kind of get around the insurance discussion pretty easily. I remember the insurance discussion used to take up more time the earlier I was in practice. The more experienced I've become, I'm able to refine that conversation earlier to explain that dental insurance is really a low-cost insurance. It's great for fillings and cleanings, but it was never meant for diagnostics, MRI, CT scans, bite appliances. It just was never meant for that. Yeah. So that's an easy way to kind of bring people through the discussion. But I will tell you, we beat our heads trying to market to patients. Why don't you market to dentists?
Right.
Develop the skill set that dentists need and let them know you're in the area. They'll send to you, believe me. They don't want to do them. Yeah. So they're happy to find someone. Same way, I've used Glenn Polson, my endodontist, for the last 30 years. He's awesome. I'm so glad he's there because I don't want to do it. Yeah. That's the same way they feel about these cases. Be the person in your community who they're going to think about. Yeah. I heard something at a Seattle Study Club symposium, and I wish I could remember who said it because I'd like to give them credit and I can't. But they really said, don't market your practice, position your practice. Positioning your practice really relates to putting your practice in the mindset of the community. So when someone has a need, they're going to contact you. Marketing is, quote, selling. It's easy. I think we might have talked about this. We never really used a website, honestly, because we were busy enough where we didn't need one, quite frankly. And patients just kept calling us on a regular basis. Yeah. So I think, again, when you look at this from a cost perspective, this is the least expensive way to market your practice as well. So now here's the way to think about it. Trade your marketing dollars for CE dollars.
That's beautiful.
That's really what you do. If you can trade your marketing and put that into CE so you can develop a skill set that will pay dividends for years. When I look back on it, my CE investment far, far, far brought back more than any other investment I've ever done, because it allowed me to see patients at a level that I wasn't able to do beforehand.
Right. I love this, Jim. I have so many questions on this one, and I completely agree with the professional community. Let me throw a challenge. I hear this one, so I'm going to give it to you. You
Sure.
know, I understand, but and you know how this is where I took my specialist to lunch. Nothing really happened. Then I went to the study club. Nothing really happened. And I'm going to lead you with the question, with the answer a little bit. I think is like you got to be invested in the long tail of it. You can't just go and try it a little bit. How important is trust when it comes to professional community?
Well, I mean, when you think about it, who do you refer your cases to? People you trust.
Right.
There's different specialists in your community. You could refer to more than one periodontist, more than one oral surgeon. It really becomes down to who you trust. Now, I'm going to tell you again, I wish I could have said that I had the intention of going at it with the big picture view. I wasn't. I was just doing it because I thought it made me a better dentist, which it did. But you're absolutely right. I think you have to be an established presence in your community, and you have to make yourself available. If anyone had a question about a case or to look at an MRI, my automatic response is, why don't you come over for lunch at the office and we'll take a look at it?
Love it.
That every time. I was looking to build relationships. I mean, again, it wasn't for the sake of referrals. That wasn't the reason. The reason was to be a resource in your community. It took me a long time to realize that ultimately those were the patients, those were the doctors who were referring me patients, the ones that I would meet with on a regular basis to look at their cases with them. You know, I wish I could have said that I planned it, but it really was dumb luck. I mean, I didn't really go in with the thought process of a marketing plan. It was just looking at cases and talking to dentists about different things that we're trying to solve in their practice. So if you can do it in a non-threatening way, especially because I'm not a specialist, you know, I'm a general dentist. So all of a sudden there's the stigma, is the dentist going to take the patient? My experience, most of the time the dentists don't want the patients back because they're afraid of the joint issue.
Right.
So I've had a lot, you know, when I first started doing this, I'd call the dentist and I'd say, okay, I think we've got the joint stabilized. I can send them back to you for the restorative. They're like, oh, how about if you do the restorative?
Yeah.
I said, okay. And that's how it just kind of started. Because again, I think it gives them a little more peace of mind to know that someone's taking care of their patients who has experience in treating patients with joint-based issues.
Yeah.
You know, here's the reality of it. This is the golden ticket in dentistry, and we routinely snub our nose at it.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want to treat these patients, honestly, because we've never seen the anatomy. Once you start imaging with MRI and CBCT, the whole thing becomes so much easier. Now you're just a baseball umpire calling balls and strikes. I mean, that's really what you are.
Yeah.
It's high-risk anatomy, it's low-risk anatomy. If you've got low-risk anatomy, we'll try phase 1 and see how you do. If you got high-risk anatomy, we'll try phase 1 and see how you do, but you got to know it's an uphill climb. But if we can't get enough response with phase 1, we've got phase 2, and we've got things we can help you with.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
And that's why the CE thing is so important. Can I ask you this question too?
Yeah.
And this is the one I love the most. And you know a lot of these people, they have a Seattle Study Club or a Spear Study Club. And
Sure.
We've seen the ones most successful. They go into it not for the single purpose of creating more referrals. Everybody knows this. You got to be in a give greater than get situation. If you're going in to facilitate these things, whether it be with a study club or not, you got to have a head and a heart of, I'm going to give more than I get. True or false?
100%. You can't be self-serving in this.
Right.
It sounds funny. And again, honestly, my experience was I wasn't, because I wasn't smart enough to realize that those are going to be referred to referral sources, you know. But once you do it and you start to get your name out there, and again, I think that if you think of yourself as trying to be a resource in the community, like the endodontist is a resource to me, I think that goes a long way. But yeah, you can't go into this looking, well, I guess, let me rephrase that, because I do see some people going into it with the sole purpose of increasing their referral base. The ironic thing is most of those are dentists that don't have a specific skill set, and they're doing it more from a practice management perspective. And that's the truth of it. my advice is get a skill set. You know, the old joke is if you've got a great skill set, even with a bad personality, you can still do well.
Yeah. Now,
If you have a good skill set, you can put together a reasonable personality where you can talk to people and talk to patients and be comfortable. It's hard not to be very successful in this style of practice.
yeah.
We've talked about this before on a previous podcast, but the restorative diagnostic practice model is really, I think, the model of the future if we're going to try to stay in a fee-for-service practice.
Yeah. 100%. I'm going to encourage you guys to go back and check that podcast out because it's one of my favorite of all time. Now, I want to stay on this one because I've got one more question. I do hear this, and I'm like, but Dr. McKee, everybody's keeping everything in-house anyway. Like, I can see where dentistry's going. Everyone's going to want to keep it in-house. Now, I'll tell you guys, if you're listening, Jim has done this in his own practice. You're also part of all of these communities, and you also teach at Spear. Is that true? And what do you say to dentists that say, hey, everybody's keeping it in-house?
Well, I think if you can keep it in-house, great.
Yeah.
So if you can do the endo as well as an endodontist, keep it in-house. What I usually find is that here's what usually will happen. When people graduate from dental school, they do every tooth that needs a root canal. And then after 3 or 4 years, they say, well, I don't do second molars anymore.
Right.
Well, now 2 or 3 years later, I don't do posterior teeth anymore. 2, 3 years later, I just do front teeth now with single canals. I think that what I have seen is that many times the longer a dentist is out of school, the more they refer to specialists. So if you're young and you need to be busy, tendency is to keep it in-house, and I totally get that. I guess the real issue is what skill set are you looking to build?
Right.
It's going to be difficult if you're looking for other dentists to send you root canals because they're probably not going to. They're probably not going to send you a veneer case either because they want to do that. They're probably not going to send you their implants because they're going to do them or they're going to send them to their periodontist. So choose a skill set that people don't generally do. And for me, again, I backed into it. I wish I could say that I planned it, but for me, it was occlusion and TMD, which basically is the foundation for every restorative treatment plan. So you have to know it anyway.
Right.
So if you can learn it and you can treat those patients, that's, as I said, that's the golden ticket in dentistry.
Yeah.
Because those will bring in patients to your practice one after another. And a lot of those will lead to restorative cases. The irony is today is that young dentists honestly don't have as much restorative dentistry to do as I did when I was a younger dentist. If I was a 26-year-old dentist who graduated from dental school and saw a 26-year-old new patient, probably 75% of the teeth had large MOD amalgams. We're going to need full coverage crowns over the course of my career. A lot of my production in the practice came from restoring those teeth with full coverage. That 26-year-old patient today who comes in as a new patient, they don't have that. So again, the young practitioner today, I think, is going to have to develop different skill sets than maybe the ones we had, because quite frankly, the needs and the demographics of the patients have changed. So what I do see, though, is a lot of 26-year-olds who had ortho for class 2 and now have a clicking joint that hurts.
Right. Right. So well said, Jim. What's the fifth way patients can come into your practice?
Well, there's another way we haven't talked about yet, and that's the way that you see a lot of young patients choose to do it, or excuse me, a lot of young dentists choose to do it, and that's joining an insurance plan. So you set a contracted rate with the insurance company, you accept their contracted rate, and you learn real quick. There's one lesson in that practice model. If there's a ceiling on your fee, there's a ceiling on your time.
Right.
It's the easiest way to think about it. So if the patient doesn't have very complex needs, then maybe they can do okay with that. The difficulty with that practice model is that what it does, it makes it more difficult for the dentist to take on more complicated cases, because those cases are going to require probably a little more time up front in diagnostics. Those are the ones you probably might want to take some study models on. You might want to think about a wax up. You might want to think about something you can visualize the end treatment before you begin. But those are the cases that generally don't get covered in diagnostics, because that's one of the things, again, that is not paid very well in a contracted policy. So it all depends on what your practice is built like, and it all depends upon what you want to do. Some patients or some dentists like doing complex cases, and that's going to be a source of stress for them because they're not going to be able to do it or get reimbursed for it. Now, some dentists, on the other hand, prefer to do single unit dentistry, and maybe they don't want to do the large cases, so maybe that's not a problem for them. Generally, though, what I hear, because I talk to a lot of dentists. I'm really fortunate through SPEAR, through Chicago Study Club, through my own study club, through online stuff, that what you see typically is very similar to what you see in the accounting world. Back in the day, actually, I graduated with an accounting degree from college, and those were the big 8 firms then. Now it's the big 4. But what they do is they work you for 2 or 3 years, and then you get out.
Yeah.
You make some money, you pay down your student debt from dental school, you work 2 or 3 years for some type of PPO-based practice. Now it's called a DSO, but most of the DSOs have a PPO component. Would you agree with that?
Totally agree with that.
So if that's the case, maybe you work 2, 3, 4 years, you pay down your debt, and then you get out and you look for a private practice.
Right.
Most of the people that I have heard who are selling, that's the typical scenario. It's usually not new grads who are taking over practices. It's someone who's been out 3, 4, 5 years, paid down their debt, and quite frankly realized that maybe they didn't want to practice with those constraints on them. Ultimately, when you're in a PPO situation, when you're in any type of situation where there's a contracted rate, so there's a ceiling on your time, what you have to do is you have to treat the patient within the time constraints that you have. Now, the patient doesn't know any different. The patient thinks they're getting the same treatment, whether it's a PPO, an HMO, a DSO, or a fee-for-service practice.
Right.
So they're thinking they're getting the same thing. Problem is the dentist doesn't have the same time or the ability to maybe charge for the different procedures or use different labs that they would be able to if they didn't have restrictions on their fee.
Yeah.
So while the first 4 options we talked about, internally marketing to your patients, externally marketing to patients you don't know, establishing a presence in your community, establishing a presence in your professional community, those were all more fee-for-service based. Joining the dental insurance plan now leads to more of an employee-employer relationship for the dentist. And if that fits your personality, that's a great way to go. Problem is, it's most of the time when I talk to dentists, it doesn't seem to fit their personality, and they're looking for a different style of practice. Not all,
Right.
because I have talked to dentists who say, look, I'd rather do it this way. I don't have to take care of the stress of hiring. I don't have to do any of that stuff. I can just come up and go to work. Most of the time, though, that's not what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So that's generally the kind of the thought process on the 5 ways to do it.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I'll piggyback on number 5.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like you said, the CE route, I totally agree. You not only learn great education, but you become more aware of who you are through this whole process. So if you're a young associate working at a DSO, actually some of the best private practice owners we know right now, they went through the DSO route for a lot of different things. They learned what they liked, what they didn't like. They also learned speed and efficiency. I can think probably one of one or two practice owners right now that never went that route that could have benefited from a little bit of pressure, and not taking 3 hours to do a crown type of a thing. So there's some good things. And then also, would you agree with this? Some people feel really guilty about going the insurance route. And I would say this, wherever you start, that might not be where you end up. You might be in an area where you have to take some insurance, and with the full mindset of, I'm only doing this because it's marketing, and I'm gonna follow this route that you're talking about, Jim. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree. What was the first point?
Well, the first point was DSO. I think a lot of times I always want to be the one to say, hey, listen, sometimes the DSO route is good for people. And you did say that. And,
that's what I was going to say. I think that as a young dentist, you don't know what you need, what you like and what you don't like.
Right.
I bought a practice, it was a really small practice. I wasn't busy enough. So I worked in a welfare practice for about 6 months. I learned real quickly what I didn't want to do in practice. So, and I think that's eventually what dentists learn, because the dental school environment is somewhat insulated. We don't have any idea of what it's like to run a small business. We don't have any idea what it's like to manage staff members or team members. We don't have any idea what it's like to run the physical plant with the equipment. So it's not a bad idea to get some time under your belt if you can learning that, but it all depends on your scenario.
Right.
The problem is a lot of times young dentists don't have a choice, because if you look at most practices, I'm going to say most practices, you would probably be able to give me better insight than that, are probably single practitioner owners. Would you agree?
Most of what we see, yes.
Yeah. All right. So here's the problem. The problem is most of the time there's too much dentistry for one dentist, but not enough for two.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So that's why a young dentist can't necessarily just join in full time. And many times the older dentist thinks they're ready to sell, and maybe they're not quite ready to sell.
Right.
And that creates stress for the younger dentists now, because they need the older dentist production to make the whole thing work. And that's the problem.
Right.
So that's why a lot of times, maybe those first couple of years, get some skill sets, pay down some debt, build up your speed, recognize more cases, and then start to go in and create something of your own.
Yeah. I love it. Jim, I love this. I have like 20 more questions I want to ask you, but I could keep you a whole another hour. Give us some final thoughts on the 5 ways you bring new patients through the practice.
Well, the first 4 we talked about, whether you're going to internally market to your own patients, externally market to patients you don't know, whether you're going to develop a presence in your community, whether you're going to develop a presence in your professional community, which is what I did, basically are all ways to try and build a fee-for-service practice. And as Kirk said earlier, you're probably going to end up using a combination of those. I would put most of your strength and energy into the last one, though. Create a skill set that dentists need. For me, it's TMD and occlusion. It may be something else for you, but that's a pretty strong one simply because not a lot of people do it.
Right.
Now, sometimes what you have to do is you still have to get patients in to pay the bills. So you may have to accept some insurance patients. That's really a slippery slope, because honestly, once you accept them, it's hard. Now you're running 2 businesses. Now you're running a fee-for-service practice, and now you're running a fixed fee practice. And that's a problem. Your staff has to be ready to manage that. You have to be ready to manage that. You can do it, but you just have to know that it's going to take a little more management work on you to make sure that the messaging is what it's supposed to be. Eventually, my suggestion is to try and move towards a fee-for-service practice, because I think that gives you more control of your own destiny.
Yeah.
It's funny. I hear a lot of people who are in the insurance plan say, oh, my fees got cut this year. I can't cut my fees. My hygienist wants a raise. My assistant wants a raise. I can't cut my fees.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, who gets the haircut? It's the dentist that gets the haircut. Insurance companies have a long view of this also. They don't mind if it takes 10 or 15 years. Look at what they've done with annual maximum benefits. Annual maximum benefits were $1,500 in 1984. They're $1,500 today.
Right.
So gradually, dental insurance becomes less valuable over time simply because it doesn't keep pace with the changes in the cost of living. So while it's a great benefit and it's nice to use, you just have to be realistic about what it provides in your practice and what it doesn't provide.
Yeah. Jim, you're the best. I'm so excited I get to teach with you in a couple of weeks.
Me too.
I want you to do this. If I'm listening and I want to be part of a cool study club like yours, where do I go? And then also tell me a little bit more about Spear Education. What else do you have planned? Like you're doing a lot of stuff in the next couple months. What are you up to?
Chicago Study Club is a study club that I started 2.5 years ago. I do it with Kurt Ringhofer, Seth Atkins, and Drew McDonald. It's a restorative TMD study club. We meet twice a year in Chicago, 2 days in the spring, 2 days in the fall. We have about 35 people. We do limited to people we know. So if you're interested, email me at jim@mckeedds.com, and I'm sure you'll put that in the chat. It's a great group. It's a deeper dive. I'm also doing something actually for Phelan Dental online.
Steven,
Are you familiar?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Steven?
Very much so.
Steven asked me if I do a TMD course, and I will tell you, I think it's probably going to be the most comprehensive online TMD course out there. It's really been a blast. I've been working at it since last August. Wow. It's 10 modules. It goes through MRI, CT, exam, treatment planning. In fact, I'm going to be recording one after we're done today. But it'll be a nice way to bring you up to speed and have a lot of information about the clinical stuff that we discuss. From a hands-on perspective, I'm at Spear teaching the Advanced Occlusion Workshop. We have one in July. It is July 25th to 27th. And actually, I think they have a promotion during the summertime that you get a deal on your hotel at the Fairmont, which might even be free for that time of year. Fairmont's a very nice property.
That's awesome.
If you're okay being in Phoenix in July, but as they say, it's a dry heat, so it's not that bad.
It is.
But we're doing a 3-day workshop there. That's a really fun course. A lot of treatment planning, a lot of hands-on, looking at MRI, CT scans, verbal skills on how to talk to patients, diagnostic records. So it's a cool course.
Yeah. I'm going to encourage you guys, if you're not taking notes, we're taking notes for you. Go down to the notes underneath wherever you consume this podcast, and you're going to see links to everything that Jim has mentioned. Make sure you check it out. You will not be disappointed. Thank you, my friend, as always. I'm so grateful.
Always such a fun time, Kirk. I can't thank you enough.
Yeah. Well, stick around when we say goodbye to everybody else, but thank you guys for listening to the Best Practices Show. This guy's an amazing mentor. Please listen to what he's talking about. He knows what he's talking about. It's going to help you create a better practice and a better life. So hope you guys enjoyed today. If you did, do us a favor, hit the share button, share this with your friends. Keep sending us suggestions for things you guys want to see. And I don't know how to say this, but the podcast keeps growing and I'm so grateful. So thank you guys for all that you do. And until we see you guys next time, or you hear from us next time, keep watching or keep listening to the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy your day.